Hi, I'm Jamey. I did used to be a teacher. I spent 15 years in the higher education classroom across disciplines. I studied Emily Dickinson and John Donne, and I loved that part of my life. And I promptly quit when I asked myself a very important question, which is how many papers have I graded in my life? I quit when I was north of 20,000. It was probably closer to 30. Why did I quit? Well, there's a very clear problem when it comes to writing. And that's that almost everybody, less than 1/3 of students, will leave their respective institutions, be that high school or college, with skills that are sufficient for the next step in their life. So high school student moving to college, or college student moving into first professional gig, etc. That's not a very good performance with respect to what I was supposed to be providing these students, and with the whole point of teaching kids how to write. And when I thought about this, there's kind of two key reasons I could come up with about why we have this problem. The first is that the skill is just hard to do. Writing well takes a tremendous amount of practice. And I don't scale. Teachers work extremely hard, but they do not scale. They can only help so many students at any one time. So if we have tens of millions of students who are behind, how are we going to fix the problem? For a linguistic guy, it came down to math for me. So technology was my assumption, right? Surely computers can do some of this. Surely computers can help automate some portion of this process. And when I started asking around, both the teachers and the computer scientists were very quick to say, no, this is not possible, because computers can't think. They can't do what you do when you read a poem by Emily Dickinson and write about it. A computer cannot replicate what you are doing in your brain. So if the computers can't do it, why should we be trusting an important process to something that is not, quote unquote, as good as your brain? It's a fair question. Underneath it, it's what I call the 95% problem. This is my groundbreaking insight into this whole deal, whether it's self-driving cars or other technologies we'll talk about shortly. We have an assumption that if the technology can't do something 100%, we shouldn't embrace it at all. It can't be as good as you, and that is true. I'm a philosopher by training. Not everything our brains do is algorithmic. You can take that to the bank, you can tweet it, you can quote me on it, but algorithms can do an awful lot of what my brain does. And stop and just think, picture the last time you called your internet service provider with a problem. And I'm going to give you an offer. You're going to spend 95% less time on the phone getting the problem solved. Would someone say, I still have that 5%, no way, no. Or we're going to have 95% less pollen in the air this time of year. Well, no, it's either all or none. Computers can't do 100%, they can do an awful lot. And given the problem, I think that's a good reason to put our arms around technology. So we're going to talk about this. Very important linguistic point. I want you to meet my dishwasher. I like it. I use it almost every night. I have 2 kids, so it gets filled up pretty quickly. As I learned when I first started using this in my marriage, there are certain things that do not go into the dishwasher. My cast iron pan, the nice wine glasses, and a few other things. But you know what? About 95% of the dishes in my house can be cleaned with this machine, and I did count and come up with a good estimate. So do I not use it? Would anybody voluntarily give up their dishwasher and say, you know what, I'm not as good a homeowner because I'm using this technology to take this task off my hands? And what happens when I use my dishwasher? I have more time to binge on Game of Thrones. Take away something you don't like to do, and what it does is provide you with more time to do the things you like to do. I'm on season 5. And I think Danny's going to get the throne in the end. So what we've done is create an algorithm that does most of what my brain does. We call it a master system in technical parlance. We've taken a person at his or her best, and I'm pretty good at what I do. I've been trained at some very high-powered institutions to do this very well. I can teach anyone to write. I can't teach millions to write. So can we create a version of my brain that can do most of what my brain does? Can an algorithm replicate my master performance? The answer is yes, and it not only can do it, but it can do it 30,000 times faster than I can do it. At 1/10,000th the cost. And by the way, it doesn't get tired. It doesn't penalize my students by 4 points if my team loses, and we did study this. It doesn't have a second or third or fifth glass of wine while I'm working my way through the 100th paper on is the death penalty moral? And the effect of that is if you give students the opportunity to practice as much as they want, when they want, what happens? They get better. As a good playwright once wrote, brevity is the soul of wit, Mr. Polonius in Hamlet, and I was never very smart. Key question, how does the computer do when it matches up with the human? Any random human expert, our algorithm is going to be within 2.33 points of that human score. And I'm going to need to go back and think about this because Professor Terry highlighted the problem. The algorithm is not biased. It doesn't care if you have the S on it or not. It looks past that, so it's actually fair. And what do we know? When there's a large discrepancy between the human and the computer, whose fault is it? Almost always it's the human's fault. We're horribly inconsistent creatures, especially when we start doing something at scale. Why does all this matter? Well, if you put technology in the hands of capable teachers, if you teach them how to use it, they don't have to do this. They can do those non-algorithmic things. I have yet to meet a teacher when I put this deal on the table, they reject it. I say, you never have to grade again. The only thing you have to provide is another 5 hours a week of your time to talk with your students face to face, to mold them into global citizens. Will you take that deal? And I've yet to have someone say, no, I love grading, screw my students, screw office hours, give me more papers. I like to feel like that. No, we like smiles on our faces. Technology is not about replacing teachers when it comes to language, when it comes to writing instruction. It's about being a good partner in education. We need kids to be writing well because that skill correlates with their future success more strongly than just about anything else they're going to learn. So I love technology, and I'm happy to take any questions because I realize I'm definitely stirring the pot a little bit. I represent the future today. When will then be now?
All right, let's give it up for Dr. Heit. All right, questions for Dr. Heit. We coming back here. The Q&A is presented by Cue Ball. The Cue Ball is coming at your head, so be ready. Awesome.
Hello. Okay. Can you hear me? Yes. I was wondering what criteria your system grades student paper on, like what evaluations they give and which it can't give.
It's an excellent question, and the easiest answer is just look at our website. We put our rubric on our website, and when we built this rubric, I solicited 200 plus rubrics from around the country, and I literally put them all out on my floor and said, how do you create something that's 90% plus similar with every single rubric here? So Ohio State, Cal Berkeley, Davidson College. We score papers. We have a cultural understanding of what constitutes a good argument. And it's the 5-paragraph essay structure, right? You state your position, you support that position, and then you summarize that position, right? The New England Patriots are the best football team in the world because they have Tom Brady. That's not an argument. That's a statement with a fact that have not been connected. So what makes a good argument if you take that statement and that fact and explain how they work together? It isn't a grammatical or syntactical engine. Again, as your research shows very, very well, grammatical and syntactical idiosyncrasies or patterns don't correlate strongly with argumentation. You can make all kinds of grammatical mistakes. I make them myself, and I used to teach the rules, and you can still write a good argument.
It's weird. My algorithm marked that New England Patriots thing is objectively wrong. That's weird. Okay, next question back here.
Hello? Fellow former teacher over here, but I taught primary school, so I'm wondering, is this at all going to be expanded to, what a fourth grader needs to be able to create is very different than higher education.
It's probably one of our most interesting research questions internally is at what point can this type of technology have an impact on student outcomes? We know that it can't help the master's students in the humanities who are writing about Bildung, right? There's a conceptual sophistication and nuance that we can't touch up high. How low can this actually be effective? Our guesses are 4th, 5th grade when students are expected to write longer form essays, and if it doesn't work that early on, my guess is it's because students don't have the aptitude fully to understand the feedback mechanisms. If you ask me to put my money down, I'd say middle school is probably when it is most effective, but we are actively running pilots with 4th and 5th graders to see if it quote unquote works.
All right, next question's in the way back here, coming in.
So, is there a way you could characterize the 5% that the computer is not good at when it comes to, grading writing, and how filling in that 5% fits in well in what teachers would end up doing?
Teachers fill in the 5%. There's a content component to language, to argumentation that, again, is not algorithmic. So I can't do it. I don't think computers will ever be able to fill in that 5%. To answer the question more specifically, picture a court of law, right? You've got two sides arguing a mutually exclusive position with ostensibly the same set of facts. You ask your students, okay, here's this case, who's right, who's wrong? That's not the correct question to ask because there's no answer to it. Right? State your position and justify it. And that 5% is you, the teacher, going in and talking to them, okay, what are the implications of your conclusions here? Right? Are there biases in our culture that have driven you to conclude what you've concluded? Right? What about things in our culture like compassion and mercy? Even if Joey's guilty, does that mean we throw Joey in jail, or should we think about other ways, non-judicial ways, non-objective ways to interact with Joey, especially if he's got caught with some drugs on his person and he didn't really do anything that teenagers don't normally do, right? There are non-algorithmic, non-mechanistic things is the term we use that are part of language, part of meaning negotiation, and that's what teachers should be focusing on because that's what they're really good at, and incidentally, I think that's probably what they want to spend their time doing.
All right, last question. Oh, he's calling off the question. All right, we're going to go over here. Calling an audible, unlike Tom Brady in the Super Bowl. Awesome. Here we go.
I was just thinking about, have you explored using machine learning or anything similar to that to try and tackle this problem where it doesn't match teachers perfectly?
There are elements of the algorithm that are machine learning. There's a real power to that type of technology. So yes, but it is not strictly machine learning. There's a real pedagogical problem with that approach. If my algorithm says you have to have A, B, and C to be good, teachers in the room or former teachers, the smartest students are the ones who are going to look at the problem and say, you know what, D is actually the answer here. And if your algorithm is not accounted for that, you're a priori saying those clever answers aren't quote unquote good, which is a problem. The flip side of it is, of course, machine learning, especially with language and computation, is a crucial piece of the puzzle.
All right, let's give it up for Dr. Jamey Heit.